Cohesion reduces burnout because team members feel supported.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Cohesive teams resolve conflict faster and more constructively. Cohesion isn't just a nice thing to have. It's not just a force multiplier. Cohesion in teams is imperative.
It sounds essential. Like you talk about the things that are detrimental to groups, teams, burnout, poor performance, inability to resolve conflicts. I mean, like, it really does matter.
Welcome to Science of Leadership, where we explore the art and share the science behind what makes great leaders and how you can become one. I'm Tom Collins, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Hamrick, and we're thrilled to have you join us on this journey to becoming a better leader.
Tom, I want to start off throwing out a topic that I wanted to discuss today, and it's really been on my mind with a lot of things that are going on, and it's really the concept of cohesion. And what I mean by that is every leadership is some part of a team. So how do we keep those teams together? How do we keep them from falling apart? And how do we create that team cohesion? That's what I really wanted to dive into today.
That's a great topic, Justin. And my undergraduate degree is in chemistry. So when I think about cohesion, I start getting all nerdy and thinking about types of bonds and that sort of thing. But
molecules.
Right. And so just as we are defining what is it we're talking about, thinking about cohesion, we've got adhesion and we've got cohesion, right? And so adhesion is basically, if you think about materials that stick to something, right? Like one thing is sticking to the other, whereas cohesion, they're both kind of joined together. There's this interaction between both, as opposed to one is doing the adhering, both are cohering together, if you will. So basically, as I think about cohesion, and this extends to groups of people and teams, it's the relationship that brings them together and keeps them together. Is that kind of what you're thinking about, what you got in mind?
Yeah, like it always comes to an example, like I think of, like in sports, there are many examples of teams on paper that you look at every skill position. The wide receiver is the best in the league. The quarterback is amazing. All of the parts look amazing. And you look at their record and it's a losing record. And when people sort of talk to it and get to the bottom of it, it's that they didn't have, it's funny you mentioned that, team chemistry. I mean, that's what they always use to describe this. Like, so I guess the question is, does that matter outside of sports? Does that team chemistry, that cohesion, do you really need that when we're talking about other teams outside of sports?
I would say the short answer is yes. I think that so often people use the analogies of athletics, sports, because they're microcosms of other spaces and things that a lot of people understand, have some commonality with. So I think that example does extend to other domains, certainly. Yeah. Then the question is, thinking about, what does cohesion look like? You mentioned athletic teams. Obviously, for us, then we also would think about things in medicine, right? Like in the space of congenital heart disease, we have, and to be honest, there are a lot of programs, if we say it that way, where cohesion is lacking, where there is difficulty. But when you have a team that really is working very well together, they're unified together, I think the performance is so much better. And people have shown that in studies in medicine, certainly congenital heart surgery and others.
I guess, like, when we're trying to define what we're talking about, obviously, like, I think people can see teams working together and say that that team has really good team chemistry. But if we're defining it, what are the traits of teams that have good cohesion? Like, obviously you mentioned one, high performance. Like, not that they always have to perform high, but they are probably, if you took two teams, added team chemistry and cohesion in it, they're going to outperform the control group, if you will. What are some of the traits that, sort of come up in your research and the studies to say this is what really defines team chemistry, cohesion, rather versus adhesion, where one person's trying to hold the team together, but the others aren't really doing their part?
Right. I can speak to things that create cohesion and also things that break it down.
Oh,
because I think that's
what I really want to get into. It's like how to destroy a culture, right?
Right.
How to lose the locker room.
When we think about the things that contribute to cohesion and strong teamwork, it's shared, insert a variable here, but it's shared purpose, shared identity, and shared goals, right? So we exist for this reason. We're all same or similar in these ways, and we're all going toward that goal. Let's use a baseball team, right? The purpose of the New York Yankees is to be the best baseball team in the world, win the World Series every year, whatever it may be. Shared identity is we're the Yankees, and the goal is year in, year out, the World Series. So the purpose is being great at baseball. The goal is the World Series, right? So those are, again, shared purpose, identity, and goals are the things that bring folks together as a team, very fundamentally. But if we look at those things that break down teams, I think that there are three consistent patterns that we see. The first is ambiguity. People don't really know the expectations or what their roles are. If you have a team that's all anesthesiologists, right, the OR is not going to function the way an OR should function. Or if there's all primary surgeons, it's certainly not going to function the way that you would want it to. So there's ambiguity. People don't know what they're supposed to be doing and expectations and roles. Number two is lack of communication. So you don't know what others are doing or thinking or struggling with. Imagine a football team, an offensive squad that comes to the line and nobody's spoken to anybody. They don't know what play they're running. They don't know what blocking scheme they're going to have. They don't know what the running back's going to do. The wide receivers have no idea where they're going. The quarterback's just hoping that somebody gets open quickly, whatever it may be. So that's just going to fall apart. And then when it doesn't work, people are going to be unhappy with each other, and that's going to dissolve those bonds, right? And then the third thing is low relational investment. So when you only interact in a transactional manner instead of forming relationships, then that team doesn't develop. And you see this, I mean, if you think about some of the worst quote unquote teams in sports history, it's those teams where you had people that were the me, look at me, it's about me, I need the biggest contract, et cetera, et cetera. The prima donnas, the team never gels. You may have the most talent. I mean, we always can look back to, the U.S. basketball team that got blasted in the Olympics because it was a bunch of prima donnas that weren't a team. So those three things, ambiguity, lack of communication, and low relational investment are things that really will dissolve the chemistry.
I want to go back to one thing you had mentioned about shared goal. Thinking about this from a leadership perspective, how do you get to a shared goal? I guess as a leader, how does that happen?
I think you have to bring people together. You have to communicate as a team, and it's not by edict, right, of the leader, but it's bringing everybody on board and saying, what are your goals? And how can this larger goal help you achieve your goals? Hopefully everybody's goals would align on the same thing. But if they're not thinking about that larger goal, maybe it's something within getting to that goal that is their goal. Okay, maybe they develop some skill or some notoriety or whatever it may be that will help to get to that goal. But I think fundamentally, to have a shared goal, everybody has to come together and see that as valuable, as worthwhile putting together the effort to move toward that goal. When it's by fiat, the leader just says, this is what we're going to do. People may do it, but they won't be as invested in it in most cases.
I 100% agree on the things that destroy culture and cohesion. I mean, ambiguity, like especially when people are starting jobs, if their expectation of what it's going to look like and your expectations, I mean, this is for any relationship. If they're not together, you're going to have friction and it's going to break down.
Let me pause here for a second and remind our listeners that my book, The 4 Stars of Leadership, is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and essentially all online outlets. It's getting rave reviews, and I'm certain you will find it not only informative, but also inspiring. So I hope you'll order your copy today. Now let's get back to this interesting conversation.
The communication I wanted to drill down on a little bit of, no one likes to get 1,000 emails a day or have 1,000 meetings where you're like, oh, are we having another meeting about this? So practically, how do you, as a leader, as a leadership team, whatever it is, how do you communicate effectively? And this is probably an entire podcast of its own, things that matter to the mission and the goal without just drowning people in minutia, I guess. Like, how do you bridge I want you to be involved, I want you to be engaged, but do you need to know what's in the sausage or how the sausage is made? I guess like that's what I wanted to sort of get your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know your audience and what your audience needs to know. A lot of things about communication, and I've got a whole section in my book that's on communication, and clearly there are people with PhDs in communication, and so we could talk a lot. Yes, to your point about could this be a podcast? This could be a career, but effective communication is built on understanding your audience. It's not on your message so much as understanding your audience and tailoring what you say to your audience. And I think that what you find in organizations a lot of times that send out all these emails and have all these meetings is that nobody knows anybody, and they just spill out all this information nonstop because they don't know how to tailor it to their audience, right?
Agreed.
Here are these people at this level, give them what they need to know. Here are these other people at this other level, give them what they need to know. And so that requires variability in your messaging. But if you don't know your people and you don't know those different echelons, you just shout out the same stuff a million times over, hoping that it'll land on some people. I think that's part of the problem that you're hinting at.
No, I agree. Like I'll get an email. It's like, hey, I just want you to be aware. And I'm like, of what? Like, and you get so many of those. You're like, I don't know what value this is adding. And so I think that's a really important point of you can't do one State of the Union address every 3 months. Like, depending on the team, assuming it's not just a couple of people, it's going to have to be tailored things to the audience. That's a really good point, because you never want to have people feel like they're in the dark or they have a lack of transparency. Because right, it's hard for the offensive linemen to buy into the play if they don't know what the play is. Like they can't actually function if they're like, oh, just block. Well, am I run blocking? Am I pass blocking? Like you have to let me know what our goal is on this. Like, I need to know what the receiver is doing so that I can effectively do my job. So that's a really good point that I know I've missed a lot in the past. I can personally see how that can really, really break down.
And it all gets to relationship, right? Like, fundamentally, it's relationship. And again, that's imperative for cohesion. You don't want to be cohering, right, to somebody that you don't have a relationship with. You're not going to if we stick with the chemistry sort of idea, you're not going to put forth the energy to create the bond. And so it's about that relationship, and communication is essential for that relationship.
That's a interesting point, that in chemistry, like, these bonds usually require some energy. And I don't think that's an untrue analogy to what we're talking about in leadership. It, like you said, it can't happen passively. You're not going to create cohesion by either of the parties being passive. But I think we've done a good job of defining what we're talking about in cohesion, certainly what it looks like, its traits, and the things that destroy it. But what does the science say? That's what we always want to get to on this. Like, what does the science say about, do we really need cohesion? Can we do it without it? Or even the things you sort of alluded to. Why does it matter? What can break it down? What makes it better? I'd like to get into a little bit of that.
Yeah. Do we need cohesion? Why is it important? We wouldn't be doing a podcast, folks. Just a spoiler alert to our listeners. We wouldn't be doing a podcast if we didn't think it was important, right? But why is it important? I think it's the level of importance is directly related to the importance of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish and the complexity of it. If you are trying to accomplish, let's say you as a person, Justin, you're gonna run a marathon. You may not require any inputs from anybody else. Like, that's a solo person operation. But if you're trying to do something that requires something beyond yourself, more than one person, then you need to have relationships to do the best job that you can, to communicate, have the same goals, the same things that we were just talking about, to be able to do that well. And again, the more complex the scenario, the more inputs that you're probably going to need. Like running an aircraft carrier, even though a lot of it can be automated, there's a lot that can't. You have so many different personnel on this ship that are doing so many different things. And everybody's got to be able to communicate. They need to know what their roles are, and they need to be invested. Because if you're not invested, you can get killed, and other people can get killed with you, right? So just fundamentally from that standpoint, it's really important. In medicine, it's the same thing. So in medicine or the military, or pick any sort of field, I think you can see that, especially when it's medicine and the military, you can see that it's a survival factor in a real sense, right? Because imagine a surgical team that is just not communicating. People don't know what their roles are. Kids on the table, chest is open, we're on bypass, and nobody knows what the plan is. Are we doing a Norwood? We doing a TET? What's the anesthetic approach what are we doing? Like that all just falls apart. And then kids can die. Same in the military, same with, humanitarian aid, let's say, right? Like, we're going to take all this food to people who are in dire need. Well, if we don't have a team that's able to work together, we're not going to accomplish that. So if you look at it, cohesive teams communicate better, they catch errors faster, which is increasingly important in medicine, and they take care of each other, which is increasingly important in medicine, where people are burnt out and disengaged and all that sort of stuff. So Cohesion, when it's done right, is what we would say in the military is a force multiplier or a performance multiplier. We're so much better. And so, getting to the question of the science, there's this area of study and theory called social identity theory that tells us that people work harder when they identify with their team. It's not just I do my job, it's we succeed together. So when individuals see the team's success as part of their own identity, that cohesion really just skyrockets. So a few research findings that really stand out. High cohesion teams communicate more frequently and more accurately. Cohesion reduces burnout because team members feel supported.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Cohesive teams resolve conflict faster and more constructively, so that that continues to build the cohesive nature. Shared rituals, this gets back to the identity that we were talking about earlier, and norms strongly predict group performance. So when you look at all these different factors, cohesion isn't just a nice thing to have. It's not just a force multiplier. I see at least when you're dealing with complex, multi-level issues, tasks, whatever it may be, cohesion in teams is imperative.
It sounds essential. Like you talk about the things that are detrimental to groups, teams, projects, burnout, poor performance, inability to resolve conflicts. I mean, like you look at any organization, any group, and those are the things that really bring it down, right? They have a fracture, they have some inequity which in the group that just sort of destroys the group, or their performance isn't as good, so they break up the team, or again, sort of going back to sports, they start speaking, they can't resolve their own conflict, so it starts getting put out into public where it's not kept in the locker room. It's interesting that cohesion actually mitigates all of them. Doesn't eliminate conflict, obviously, but like allows groups to circle the wagons, if you will, like to become stronger through it. I mean, a lot of this almost seems like a poster, like teamwork makes the dream work, or none of us as strong as all of it. Like, those things, but like cliches are cliches for a reason, I guess, like
right.
it really does matter. And I want to go back to those three things that you sort of pointed out, because I think the things that they don't put on teamwork posters or HR posters, where it's like teamwork is like, how do you do it?
Yeah, so it's shared purpose, shared identity, shared goals. Those three things. And so as I think about what it looks like, I can think about a team that I had the great privilege and honor to lead at my prior institution. We had this clinical team, and that team was predicated on relationships. So fundamentally, as we're talking about cohesion, the thing that just keeps coming to my mind is relationship. We're really talking about strong relationships, right? Where people want to work together, to stick together, to cohere. And so when I got there and I started identifying the people to be on the team, it was about chemistry. It was about fit. It was about knowing, okay, what is the culture that I want to build for this group of people? Because we're going to be trying to build the best program in the world for this set of patients, right? Very complex patients. Who do I want to be by my side? What are the kind of people that I think we need to do this well? And then going about and finding them, and then building the relationships with them, bringing them on board and building those relationships and making sure that everybody had a clear expectation. People knew what their roles were. We all shared the same language. We were all heading the same direction. And man, even to this day, I'm not there anymore. But that culture, building that culture of relationship where everybody's in this together, it's still going strong, still a phenomenal team. And this ability to create cohesion and build that team was, elemental to that. It wouldn't exist without it. So that's an example I can say where we're doing that directly translated to the success of the team, to improve care, to all these sorts of things.
You've mentioned a quote before, and I can't remember. It's about a bus and who's on it versus where it's going.
Yeah, so
I'm struck by that.
Yeah, so that idea comes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And in it, he talks about first get the right people on the bus and then figure out where you're going. I have some disagreements with that concept to some degree, right? Because that's great when you're talking about kind of startup and business and that sort of thing. But fundamentally, if you have a congenital heart program or you have a baseball team, you know where you're trying to go. Get the right people on the bus to get there, right?
But it does underline the things you mentioned of the importance of who's on the bus. Like it's
right.
It's not, oh, we're going to drive the bus, just load it up with whoever. But, sort of what
Yeah.
you're talking about, the team you built, like you should be looking at cohesion on the front end. Like when you're bringing people on, like, are they going to have shared purpose? Are they going to have shared identity? Are they going to have a shared goal? Or is this somebody who's not? And you see it all the time. Like, when people are going to be drafted at some sports team, they're like, oh, this isn't a team guy. Like, and that's a knock on their like draft status of like,
Yeah.
can is this a this person? I mean, the Patriots, there was a Patriot way. I mean, they had a way that they did. Like, that's who they brought in. Oh, Michigan's always, is he a Michigan guy? Like, that speaks to that culture, to
Yeah.
that we're finding people that are going to have a shared vision,
Mhm.
a shared identity, and a shared purpose or goal. Like, that's
Yeah.
really
And
speaks to that.
as you're saying that, the thing that keeps ringing in my head is, and it's so easy to ruin it. One person, right? You bring in the wrong person. I mean, I can imagine people out there who listen. It's like, what if you got the wrong person on the bus? You get them off the bus. You move them off the bus. Hey, you've got great skills. They're just not what we need for our team. Because really, it really is a matter of one rotten apple spoils the whole bunch, right? It really only takes one negative person. Again, if we go back to the chemistry of it, like they can dissolve so many of those bonds. And I'm getting a little crazier. They're acidic, right? They're just grabbing up these connections. They're breaking down the cohesion of the team, and you have to remove them. So that's something that's really, I think, also important, is not only getting the right people in there, and Jim Collins talks about that, but getting the wrong people out.
Mm.
If you inherit a team that isn't functioning well, look for the person or people who are dissolving the relationships, the negative people, and so on, who don't share the purpose, they don't share the identity, they don't share the goals.
And you can't get them there.
Right.
And that's like through all the things, like, it's not that, well, you've got the things that destroy culture there, but then you install the things that do, relationships, all of those things, and it still doesn't, then you've got a personnel issue.
Right. All right, let's shift to some practical tips.
Oof, love it when we do that.
Yeah.
What's the take home? Yeah, this has been another very pie in the sky type. Like, you just need strong relationships. You need shared purpose. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm thinking the next time I run into this, like, practically, how am I going to do it? And it's like, how do you do it and not it sound like you're giving a cheerleading speech where you're like, like, let's say you've got a new team you're forming. How do you instill it from the beginning? Like, if you had that, like, how would you do it?
Yeah. So as I was thinking about 5 tools, can I just say, it really bothers me when people talk about tips and tricks. Like, that's just like some noise that people use a lot now. It's like sort of buzzwords. Can you give me some tips and tricks? There was a resident in clinic 2 weeks ago with me. She was in clinic and she said something about tips and tricks. I'm taking care of children who have abnormal hearts. There are no tips and tricks. This is not about tricks, folks. All right. I didn't say that. I was just like, here's some things we're going to learn today, Anyway, so you won't find tips and tricks here on the Science of Leadership, folks. But what we can give you right now are 5 tools, okay, that I was thinking through and came up with. There are others, I'm sure, but here are 5 that I came up with. First, establish a shared purpose. Teams have to know why they exist. Clarity of mission aligns people's behaviors and reduces conflict. And that'll get you along. If you don't do anything else, that'll get you a long, long way on the journey to cohesion. Tool number 2, create rituals of connection. This can be, some places do daily huddles, other places do weekly wins or shout outs or things of that nature, even small shared traditions of some sort or other. You could have a talisman of some kind, right? It's like, oh, here's the group walrus or whatever it may be, right? That people say. And fundamentally, that is part of what rituals of connection. If you think about sports teams, colleges, military units, other things, that's what you have. You have these rituals of connection, and cohesion grows through those repeated rituals and that interaction. So that's another thing. Find ways that you can create that. Number 3, and this one is really directed at us as leaders, taking a big step, model vulnerability and humility. We as leaders set the tone. When we ask for input, when we admit our mistakes, we share uncertainty, others feel safer to do the same thing. So again, psychological safety, we've talked about that uncounted times here on the Science of Leadership, but that's imperative for creating trust in relationships. And again, as I've talked about already, that's the foundation of creating cohesion and great teams. Tool number 4, build what I call micro trust moments. These are small acts, right? Like checking in. Hey, how's everything going with you? Remembering details. Tomorrow's your birthday. How's your kid doing? Or it may be details about what they're working on. hey, I know you were having trouble with X. How's that going? Offer to help in that situation. Those micro trust moments then accumulate into deep trust over time. And then tool number 5, align incentives. People are evaluated individually, but expected to act as a team in situations where you're trying to break down cohesion. Okay, cohesion suffers when we do that. We need to reward collective success, and this is something. This is actually something I've thought a lot about, especially in medicine. And, as I think about leading teams in medicine, we have a lot of people who are high performers, but it turns out if you're always just recognizing, hey, Justin is the greatest since sliced bread, over and over and over, or if it's just a small group of people who are getting those called out, and these other people who are just as important but not as visible don't get recognized, that erodes the teamwork and the cohesion. So figure out ways to reward collective success and avoid just always talking about the prize pony. So those are the five tools. So let me run back through them just real quick. Number 1, establish shared purpose. Number 2, create rituals of connection. Number 3, model vulnerability and humility. Number 4, build micro trust moments. And number 5, align incentives.
Let me ask you a very practical question, mostly personal question. So you mentioned establish, what was number 2? Ritual.
Yeah.
Establish shared rituals.
Shared rituals. Mm-hmm.
With COVID, we have had
You got to
a
bring
lot
COVID in
of
here, man.
movements and meetings going to Zoom, whereas before we would meet together in a room. I understand the benefit of Zoom and whatever other application you've got for people to join that may have other responsibilities where they cannot physically be there. Would you push for, in some situations, for Zoom to be pulled back and be like, hey guys, we're going to meet together? I just feel like it's very easy to disconnect and not have that shared ritual when you're on Zoom. Whereas I feel like you were saying, you get people into a room. This is, hey guys, every Friday morning, this is where we meet. This is where we come together and share coffee or what. Are we at a place where we can do that? I don't want to say mandate it, but like where you can really push like, guys, this is important. This is why it's important.
Yeah. Well, as much as I hate for COVID to come up, seriously, this is actually a very important question. It gets to a little bit of what I was just talking with Chris Dunphy from MIT on one of our episodes. And we were talking about, bringing together multidisciplinary teams and how to do that. And so this podcast is a little bit related to that, but we're talking about different material. And in that podcast, I talked about creating proximity and the value of proximity with regard to relationships. And so studies consistently show that when we're close to, literally, someone's sitting beside you, you're more likely to develop a relationship with those people than you are if somebody's across town in another state on the other side of the world, right? That makes sense. And for some reason, we have to prove it with science, some of these things. But anyway, proximity is very important in human relationships. And the physical component of that is very important. So yes, taking those moments to say, hey folks, I want everybody to actually attend in person. This is something that in my current role, we've discussed a lot. So for those who aren't in medicine, we have these, what shall we say, learning opportunities, meetings, lectures, whatever you want to call them, called grand rounds. Okay. And those happen depending on the organization, weekly. They may happen monthly for some organizations. It sort of depends. But a lot of organizations have gone, since COVID, have gone to online. And so it's so much easier for people to just, connect via Zoom or what have you, and watch and don't actually attend. And here at our place, we've just recently said, you know what, we're gonna start doing grand rounds a little differently. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to start having in-person grand rounds once a month, and we'll have other offerings throughout the other weeks of the month. But once a month, we're going to have in-person grand rounds, and you can't tune in. You have to come in person because we want people to come and connect because that's a huge part of it. Additionally, just from the standpoint of having been a speaker who's been invited to do grand rounds at different institutions, when you load up and you fly somewhere and you put together all the effort to present a grand rounds and you show up and there are like 7 people, in the audience, like, man, that's a terrible look for that organization, right? So, there may be 100 people online, but you don't see those 100 people. You see 7 people sitting out in this big space. But to your question, yes, it is important to actually be in person. And I think that more and more organizations are recognizing that and instituting some a little bit draconian, if you ask me, but instituting measures to say we want people to attend in person.
Yeah. I agree. Like there's just something about the discussions that happen when you're looking somebody in the eyes, person to person, and you are close to them that just can't happen over Zoom. And I get it. Like Zoom is a tool for, like, there's sometimes like somebody's on vacation, but you really want their input. They're out of state. And I understand it, but it's tough to balance that versus, hey, guys, our purpose is to grow as a team and to increase cohesion. And this is one of the ways we're going to do it.
Yeah. So, any parting thoughts on cohesion?
This is one of the things you just don't have to convince me of. I'm a team guy. I believe in team first. I've been on enough teams to see bad teams, and you look around at the talent and you're like, how are we losing or how are we not succeeding? And I don't want to overuse the term cancer, but the bad apple or losing the locker room, losing the morale is such a cancer and can set organizations and teams back decades. And to get it back, like, it's such a cohesion culture. It's such a fragile thing in its beginning. And you see some that are like so strong, but I think it's how they protect it. Like, they've cultivated it.
Yeah.
They have a big team that has bought into it. And so one bad apple may come in, but is recognized as what that. Nick Saban's got this story of somebody comes in and they're a rookie and they're doing something different at practice, maybe not hustling or something like that. And it's not Nick Saban that actually comes and calls them out. It's the seniors on the team that come in and that, hey, we don't do that here. That's not what we're about. So it's that example of, like, it's obviously a top down, but because of that shared leadership, that shared purpose, that everyone on the field except one person knew that, and it's either that person's going to buy into that or they're going to make this sit in the place from me.
Yeah.
So how about you? Anything that was sort of struck by sort of what we tried to unpack today?
I think it is just as you said. I mean, I'm a team person. I really recognize the value, and I've lived the experience time and time again of working with great teams. I've also had the opportunity to see teams that were entirely dysfunctional. And so I know that the importance of teams and that cohesion, those relationships, you can't have good teams without it. And so I think that it's fundamental to leadership. It's fundamental to accomplishing goals and missions and so forth. And so I think anybody who's trying to lead needs to be good at cultivating cohesion among those they're leading. That's simple. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Science of Leadership. We hope today's discussion has inspired you and given you valuable insights to help you become a better leader. Remember, leadership is about helping those we lead do great things. It's a journey of continual growth and learning. When we embrace that journey with curiosity, courage, and humility, we can confront challenges, overcome barriers, and foster environments where everyone can succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others who are passionate about leadership. Until next week, keep leading with character, competence, caring, and communication. This is Tom Collins. Let's keep growing.